To Cape Town next, and the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA, they've now finally complied with an order by the Western Cape High Court, and that order compels it to return building materials belonging to people sleeping on Transnet-owned land on Cape Town's Foreshore. But the land dwellers say PRASA have yet to fulfill the most critical part of that order, to reconstruct the structures. Our Latashia Naidoo is there. She's been following the story and brings us more. Latashia, good morning. Share with us the backstory to what's led to both the evictions and this order now.
Well, a very good morning to you, Iman. I'm standing on the site of the evictions. This is Transnet-owned land on the Foreshore, but the people who have been living here many of them have been here for over 20 years. And in August this year, PRASA attempted to evict the 38 different people who have been living on this land, removing all their belongings, destroying their structures and shelters. And in September this year, with the assistance of Ndifuna Ukwazi, the housing activism group, these land dwellers went to the Western Cape High Court, and PRASA were ordered to comply with the court order to return the belongings and to rebuild the structures for the 38 people who had been living on this land. But as you mentioned, PRASA complied in terms of returning the belongings. But what hasn't happened is that the shelters were not rebuilt. I've been told that with regard to the belongings, a lot of things that were given back to the people living here did not actually belong to them. And it's actually things like ID documents and birth certificates which are still outstanding. But I have Jonty Cogger here, who is a lawyer for Ndifuna Ukwazi, the housing activist group that's been assisting these land dwellers, to tell us a little more about the situation and what's going to happen next now that PRASA has since failed to comply with that court order. Jonty, thank you for speaking to us. Could you tell us a little more about the legal process and what's going to happen now? As I mentioned, PRASA have not fulfilled every aspect of that court order.
Yes, good afternoon. I mean, the order was fairly simple. You have to return, restore, and reconstruct. They've only partially complied with the order, which is not only flies in the face of the rule of law, but it also is a continuing injustice to our clients. Fortunately, they have been able to reconstruct themselves, but the possessions that were returned by PRASA weren't theirs, and so it does raise a difficult factual question of how to prove exactly what kind of possessions were taken. You can appreciate that these events, operations happen very, very quick, but it's an ongoing concern that when you break the law, you need to fully comply with the court order.
And what are the expectations moving forward? Are the people going to remain on this land, or are there going to be further evictions?
Well, the Transnet, who owns the land, is fully entitled to follow the law and bring an eviction application. But what the court order with regards to PRASA is very clear is that you can't break the law in trying to evict someone. That's called an illegal eviction. And so by all means, Transnet can follow the law and do the right thing. But for now, no one can be evicted without a court order. It means that they have the right to remain here until the law is followed.
Thank you, Jonty. Well, there you have it, Iman. We did make attempts to contact PRASA, but have not received any response from them just yet. They were given 24 hours to actually rebuild the shelters for the people living on this land in September, and it's now towards the end of October, and they have yet to comply. But this is a developing story, and we'll bring you more once we have further details.
Just quickly before we let it go, Latashia, what's the impact of all of this been on the people themselves, the people who were evicted, the people who want those shelters to be restored?
Well, Iman, this has been, for many of them, like I mentioned, this has been their home for over 20 years. And to have their homes destroyed and the belongings, the very little that they do have taken away from them, things like their ID books. It's been quite distressing for a lot of people, but they've since tried to rebuild the sense of home that they've created over all these years, even though PRASA were court ordered to do so and assist. So they're slowly trying to rebuild their lives, but it's just a matter of time and a question of what next if PRASA is actually going to get a court order to evict them another time.
Latashia Naidoo, thank you very much. The latest there on the story that affects PRASA in respect of a court order delivered by the Western Cape High Court. They've got to return some of the building materials belonging to people sleeping on their land there in Cape Town on the Foreshore.